ASMR Magical Tools. Hi, welcome back. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. So, we're going to be going into the week of September 27th into October 3rd. The moon is going to start this week in the sign of Gemini, and by the end of the week, it's going to be over here in Virgo. And we are going to be experiencing the waning moon. The last full moon was in Pisces on September 20th. And then our new moon is going to be on Wednesday, October 6th. And that, of course, is going to be in the sign of Libra, the new moon and the sun always being in the same sign, and then the full moon and the sun being in opposition. What's happening this week? Well, first of all, Mercury is going to be going retrograde. Is there anything else that I need to mention at this time? We're going to be going from the 7th lunar mansion of Altira to the 13th lunar mansion of Al-Awa over the course of this week. And of course, we will also be going from the month of September into the month of October. I feel like burning frankincense today. It's very loud, isn't it? And just allow your intention to focus on the flame. And we're just gonna smoke cleanse a little bit. Smoke cleanse a little bit around you. I haven't burned frankincense in a while. I've been mostly using the Black Magic incense. Alright, let's start with Monday, September 27th. Monday, September 27th. This is going to be the 7th lunar mansion of Altira, which was considered part of a forearm of a giant lion. But now we have those two stars, which are its significators, in the heads of the constellation of Gemini. Just to clarify. think I mentioned last week that the Mercury retrograde is going to be occurring overnight between September 26th and September 27th. And that's going to be right about in the middle of the night. So hopefully we'll all be sleeping calmly in our beds. The first transit of Monday, September 27th, is going to be occurring in the middle of the morning. There's going to be a quincunx between the moon in the sign of Gemini and Venus, which, as you know, at this time is in Scorpio, right? So this quincunx between Venus, this very occluded, sexual, dark kind of an energy, could be even a little manipulative, is going to be quincunx to the moon in Gemini. Gemini, of course, being the sign of the twins, a very fraternal energy, can have to do with communication. And the moon is going to be kind of going into its dark cycle. So there could be confusion with some communication that comes off in a way that's very occluded, or somebody might think another person's being manipulative, especially as it relates to romantic matters, but also possibly money, because remember, Venus can also have to do with money. That moon in Gemini, so I forgot to go over the traits of that lunar mansion. We've got divine throne, cosmic axis pole, glorification, supplication, invocation, and gain. So that quincunx might be driving some kind of supplication or invocation for the purpose of gain. The next transit that we'll be looking at is going to start an opportune period. So this is going to be at 1:11 on the west coast of the United States and 4:11 on the east coast. That would be 13:11 and 16:11 respectively, for those of you who like to use 24-hour time. I love 24-hour time because it makes things a lot more clear. You never have to ask, do you mean AM or PM? This is going to be a square between the moon in Gemini and Neptune, which at this time is retrograde in the sign of Pisces. Retrograde in Pisces. And this opportune period is going to be good for relaxing or socializing because, of course, the moon is waning and Mercury is in retrograde now. Sorry, my camera was a little out of focus there. The opportune period is going to end when the moon goes void, of course, and that's going to be at 21:18. That's 9:18 p.m. on the West Coast, or 0:18, which would be 18 minutes past midnight on the East Coast. And we'll talk more about that overnight energy when we get there. The next placement, the next transit we'll look at, is going to occur in the middle of the afternoon toward the evening hours of Monday, September 27th. It's going to be an air trine between the moon in Gemini and Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius. So, Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius can lead to unpredictable kinds of expansion. Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius can also be expansion and contraction of social groups. And it's a time when your social groups might really be fluctuating. Keep in mind, too, that during retrogrades, sometimes things will come on and be very strong within the period of the retrograde. And then they're kind of part of that retrograde. And when the retrograde is over, maybe they just kind of float off somewhere, never to be seen until the next retrograde. This moon in Gemini is good for fraternal feelings, so feeling emotionally close to other people, as though they are your siblings. There's going to be a quincunx later in the evening toward the nighttime hours of Monday, September 27th. This quincunx is between the moon in Gemini and Pluto which is retrograde in Capricorn. Capricorn, yes. Capricorn is a very practical earth sign, and it's all about utilizing the things in the world around you to support yourself in life and make a living for yourself. So when we have Pluto retrograde in that sign, and Pluto has been in Capricorn since I think like 2008, so there's just been a lot of volatility there. This moon in Gemini, so because we have a quincunx that could be driving some action with Pluto in Capricorn. Moon in Gemini, you might even be reaching out to a sibling or a very close friend about job prospects. Gemini might also be a business that's close to your house, in your neighborhood. And there could be some kind of communication that you're putting out there. And there might be like an emotional appeal to it. Hopefully not laying it on too thick and cheesy, right? And then finally our overnight energy, when the moon goes void, of course. The moon in Gemini is going to be trine Mercury, which is retrograding in the sign of Libra. And this overnight energy, so we've got 2 air trines on Monday, September 27th, and they are both dealing with retrograde planets. So that gives us the potential for a return of things that we haven't seen in a while also. If you haven't seen siblings in a while, if there's friends that are close to you like siblings and you haven't seen them in a while, you might be hearing from them or you might be reaching out to them. Mercury can be communication. Mercury is native to Gemini. And because Mercury is in Libra, this period of time opens up the potential for hearing about legal matters, also hearing about potential partnerships. But keep in mind that while Mercury is retrograde in Libra, those partnerships might be relegated to retrograde seasons. So be wary of that. Now let's talk about Tuesday, the 28th of September. We're going to be dealing with the 8th lunar mansion, Al-Nathra, which means the gap. And this was considered to be along the nose of the great lion. But now, of course, that star that is the significator of this lunar mansion is in the sign of Cancer. And themes for this lunar mansion are putting things on a pedestal, possibly casting your pearls before swine, numinous support, so that would be money coming in, I believe, victorious energies, alliance and conquest. I might have got that a bit wrong. Not casting pearls before swine. Rather, the way that the nacre builds up around the grain of sand into something quite beautiful. Take that away from it instead. I already mentioned our void of course, Moon and Mercury air trine from the overnight energies. And then in the early to middle part of the morning, the moon is going to enter the sign of Cancer. And moon is native to Cancer, so this is being in your feelings about things. This is a time to really strongly feel the energies of the moon, where it is in its own cycle. This is going to be the 4th quarter moon, so the last quarter heading into the new moon. Then this is going to occur around 1900, that's 7 p.m. on the west coast, and 2200, that's 10 p.m. on the east coast. There's going to be a square. It's a cardinal square. It's between the moon in Cancer and the sun in Libra, and that's our fourth quarter moon. So Libra is very much about equity and fairness, and Cancer is not totally disregarding of fairness, but is much more occupied with the emotions. So the sun shining light on inequalities to be evened out, and the moon kind of tucking one's emotions back up and under, bottling up kind of energy of different situations. So, kind of like that grumbling to oneself of like, well, I don't think that's fair. But it probably is. Just be wary of that on the evening of Tuesday, September 28th. Then the final energy that we will be looking at is going to be later in the evening to nighttime hours. And that's going to be the moon in the sign of Cancer, quincunx. This is a quincunx with Saturn in Aquarius. So remember that I've been talking about this Saturn retrograde in Aquarius in the context of the powers that be and those at the top of hierarchies kind of digging in their heels against change and against the needs, wants, and desires of the group of all of us together at large. The hoi polloi, the common man. Where we have this quincunx with the moon in Cancer, remember that we had that square with the sun in Libra not too long before this happens. So this quincunx could be driving some action where people see inequalities getting evened out, getting ironed out, and they do something to protect their own interests based on gut emotions, like you would see with a fourth quarter moon in Cancer. It could be a tucking away, getting the sense of like a Four of Pentacles type energy, possibly even Four of Pentacles reversed, in that they are holding tightly to resources that would be better distributed to all. Now let's get into Wednesday, September 29th. The lunar mansion that we will be entering on Wednesday, September 29th, is the 9th lunar mansion of Al-Tarf, and this refers to the eyes of the lion. The themes of this lunar mansion are divine wrath, severity, disempowerment, infirmity, frustration, misfortune. It is good for destroying the crops of your enemy. It's good for making trouble for people who are your enemies and are currently traveling. doing evil to men, but inversely to all of this, it is also an excellent time to do protection magic for yourself. It's like having eyes in the back of your head. The first transit that we will be looking at for Wednesday, September 29th, is a square. We have a couple of squares and a couple of trines on this day. This square is going to be between the moon in Cancer and Mars, which is in the sign of Libra. I think about Mars in Libra as being the very pugilistic Knight of Swords, really going out there to drive an agenda, probably in the interest of fairness. But people can have all kinds of opinions about these very black and white situations. And the Knight of Swords is a very polarized card. This is going to be happening very early in the morning. I will be surprised if anyone is awake for this, except for those of you who are working overnight shifts or are night owls or wake up very, very early. That moon in Cancer, and especially in this lunar mansion of Altarf, where there really is a lot of severe energy already, the square with Mars has the potential to just be very complicated. Just a very overwhelmingly ready to fight energy. So just be very careful out there in the wee hours of the morning on Wednesday, September 29th. Toward the middle of the morning, so that's going to be 4:20 a.m. on the West Coast, smoke 'em if you got 'em, and 7:20 a.m. on the East Coast. There's going to be a square between the moon in the sign of Cancer and Chiron retrograde in Aries. So anything that has happened during that previous square, Chiron in Aries, and especially when it's retrograde, you're going to be dealing with issues having to do with selfishness, having to do with beginning things and not finishing them, and having to do with immaturity. So, because of the retrograde, there might be things that you think you've already settled regarding these issues that might crop back up again. And because of people kind of bottling up their feelings with the waning moon in Cancer, it could be a little bit volatile. There's just going to be quite a bit of volatile energy on the morning of Wednesday, September 29th. And the key is not to be controlled by any astrology forecasts that you hear online, but being aware of these energies so that if issues do crop up, you can think about the energies at play and tackle them accordingly. So later in the morning, toward the middle of the day, there's going to be a trine. And this trine is between Venus in the sign of Scorpio and Neptune in Pisces. Neptune in the sign of Pisces, which is another water sign. It's a water trine. And Scorpio and Pisces. And then the fact that we have the moon in Cancer. And the trine between both Neptune and Venus with the moon in Cancer is going to be the next day, so we'll get to that, so don't worry. We will deal with that, but just know that that Venus in Scorpio is already a very occult energy. So where we have this, and I say occult, yeah, sure, it's a very witchy energy. But when I say occult in this context, what I mean is occluded, hidden energies. And so this Neptune, where it's retrograde in the sign, in its native sign of Pisces, there's going to be the opportunity for illusion, the opportunity for mind games, mental labyrinths. So one thing that I would recommend that would be amazing for this period of time would be to do pathworking exercises, or other guided meditation where you are focusing on protection. If you are inclined to Malefica, obviously with the moon in Altarf, this would be a good time for that. And I don't judge, but I also don't encourage it. A little bit after this, so this is going to be maybe almost 2 hours later, in the middle of the day, the moon in the sign of Cancer is going to be sextile Uranus in Taurus. Uranus in Taurus, which is also, conveniently enough, retrograde at this time. This moon in Cancer, we're dealing with these kind of like emotional, passive-aggressive feelings. And I say that because the moon will be waning at this time. So that's kind of specifically why I keep mentioning that. Uranus in Taurus, this could be issues around joint property. There could be things about it's going to be things where the stability of a group is kind of contingent on the whole. Now this is a sextile, so it's a very favorable placement. So there might be something that gets worked out around this time, to everyone's mutual benefit and, more importantly, satisfaction. That's the problem with compromises, is that they're not very satisfying. And leads to things like disempowerment, frustration, and people wanting to destroy your crops. So the final transit that we will be discussing for Wednesday, September 29th, is an air trine, And that's going to be between the Sun in the sign of Libra and Saturn retrograde in Aquarius. That's going to be more toward the middle of the afternoon to the early evening hours of Wednesday the 29th. And remember all the things that I've said about Saturn retrograde in Aquarius and how those at the top of hierarchies are kind of kicking down to keep others in their place. Where we have this trine with the Sun in Libra, something could be happening to change that for the better. This is going to be shining a spotlight on justice. It's going to be illuminating inequalities and exposing them to the light of truth. So there could be things that end up working out to the mutual benefit of all at that time. Let's move on now to Thursday, September 30th. This is going to be the last day of the month of September, and this of course applies to the Gregorian calendar, which is predominantly used in the United States and other parts of the world. I just wanted to clarify, I kind of low-key hate the Gregorian calendar. I don't know if you've noticed, but this is not about my opinions. So, on September 30th, we will be in the lunar mansion, the 10th lunar mansion of Al-Jabha, which is the brow of the lion, and one of the significators for this lunar mansion is Regulus. Regulus is a very famous star in the sign of Leo, and can be a significator in the charts of very powerful people. Some of the themes of this lunar mansion: power, success, aid, healing, recovery, improvement, help, increasing strength also. Increasing strength. And this star is kind of like on the very edge of Leo, going into the constellation of Leo from Cancer. So for a lot of the day on Thursday, September 30th, the moon will still be in Cancer, and then at the very end of the day, it will be moving into Leo. So early in the morning, we're talking 1 a.m. on the west coast and 4 a.m. on the east coast. When I say very, very early in the morning, that's usually the time frame I'm talking about, just FYI. I know I use a lot of shorthand when it comes to the time of day, because I feel like in an ASMR video, if you really want to know the exact time, you can look it up. This is going to be, as I mentioned before, we're going to have those two water trines with the moon in the sign of Cancer. So this is the first of those, and this one is going to be Neptune retrograde in its native sign of Pisces. Pisces, in its native sign of Pisces. So, this trine between the moon in Cancer and Neptune in Pisces, this is going to be really wonderful for prophetic dreaming. So on the evening of Wednesday the 29th, before you go to bed at 9 p.m. like me, you might want to set a good intention to hold that energy in your sleep and make sure that you're documenting your dreams. I do keep a consistent dream journal, but it's okay to not write down your dreams every single night. It can get kind of tedious, I think. The important thing is to keep track of themes, keep track of very important dreams, like when you feel that very important energy. Sometimes I'll have dreams where I feel like I've done a lot of work in the astral plane, but I won't be able to remember very much about that dream. You could make a dream journal note about that if you wanted to. I don't always, but sometimes I do. However, because we're talking about this moon in Cancer and Neptune is going to be retrograde, try to keep a very objective mind about any prophetic dreams that you might have on Thursday, September 30th. So about almost 2 hours later is when the next trine, the next water trine with the moon in Cancer is going to occur. And that's going to be the one with Venus in Scorpio. What if Venus was retrograde in Scorpio? Wouldn't that be scary? I'm just kidding. Some of you might still be asleep at this time, but if you're not, that's okay. This is a very good time to do shadow work. So that might be incorporated into your dream work. But basically, because this moon in Cancer is going to be all about these passive-aggressive feelings and bottling things up, that Venus in Scorpio being about hidden energies related to finance and romance, and this being a trine, it would be an excellent opportunity for you to investigate some of those things within yourself. And now we are at 4 a.m. on the West Coast and 7 a.m. on the East Coast. And I am, of course, referring primarily to the United States where I am located. So I will trust you to acclimate to your own locale. And there's going to be a quincunx. This quincunx is between the moon in Cancer and Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius. Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius. I wouldn't get too far inside your own feelings about this one, because what we're going to be talking about is a quincunx, possibly sparking action of some kind. A quincunx is not a full opposition, right? But it is a very obtuse angle. So when we're dealing with a quincunx, we want to make sure that the action that we're taking is direct and meaningful. the kind of thing that might end up happening with this kind of energy is there's the potential for like emotional drunk texts en masse to a group of friends. And you're just hoping that it comes off correctly. This would also be the energy of a passive-aggressive email to the entire, like, CCing, not BCCing the entire office, talking about how somebody keeps trashing the bathroom or something, and not really having regard for the separation between your general coworkers and the people at work that you genuinely consider friends. Just a warning on that, because this energy could also be very effective, where you come with that compassionate Moon in Cancer energy. You have the potential to win people over also. So when you are phrasing that email, I recommend doing it from a place of love and compassion and the idea that you want to win people over. So now we're talking about, this is going to be about 3 hours later. Yes, because remember too, back to that quincunx, that we are in Al-Jaba, which is a very fortuitous energy. Remember, power, success, healing, recovery, improvement. So it would be a great time to increase your influence. And about 3 hours after this, there's going to be an opposition, because we've got the moon in Cancer over here, and we've got Pluto in Capricorn up here. Now, the moon is very close to the Earth, very influential energy for our planet. Pluto is about as far away from the Earth as you can get, except maybe some of our other satellites like Chiron, depending on what time it is. Now remember, Pluto is retrograde in Capricorn. It's been in Capricorn for quite some time. It's got a very long orbit. I think it takes over 200 years for it to make a full rotation through all of the signs. And it's the classic conflict always between Cancer and Capricorn of your home life versus your professional life. This won't be much different, only that because Pluto is retrograde, that could create some unforeseen volatility in some of these situations. So really tap into the fortuitous energies of this lunar mansion to get the best advantage out of that opposition. And all of this is going to be happening really early in the morning too, so some of you might not even be awake for any of this. Around 7:50 in the morning on the west coast and 10:50 in the morning on the east coast. This is going to be when the moon in Cancer goes void of course, before it goes into the sign of Leo. That's right. And this is going to be where it makes a cardinal square with Mercury. Don't forget the little ears. I think they're horns. They could be wings on his hat. Comment down below if you know. Mercury, of course, being retrograde in the sign of Libra. So, communication about fairness, possibly. Could be an emotional communication to a partner, either romantic or business. A close associate. And there could be a bent of justice to it. This is a square, so mind that. Squares create tension, traditionally. But the thing about creating tension in a situation is that it can push for change. Sometimes with trines and sextiles, things are very harmonious. And that's nice, especially when those situations are going well and don't need to change. But where we see squares, it's understood that the tension is there, because perhaps it's time to nudge things in a different direction. Now, in the middle of the afternoon toward the evening hours, there's going to be a square, and that's between Venus in fixed sign Scorpio and Jupiter in fixed sign Aquarius. Fixed sign Aquarius. So this square is, there's a possibility there for, remember, Venus in Scorpio can be kind of manipulative. So there's the potential for that there when someone is trying to win influence using that Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius energy. And then finally, remember that the moon is going to be going into the sign of Leo, and that's going to be occurring right before 1800 hours, that's 6 p.m. on the west coast, and right before 2100 hours, that's 9 p.m. on the east coast. So now let's talk about October 1st. It is a Friday. The moon will be in the 11th lunar mansion, which is Al-Zubra, meaning the mane of Leo. Now, in the modern constellation, the star, which is the significator, is actually in the hindquarters of the modern constellation of Leo. The themes of the 11th lunar mansion: lordship, mastery, numinous charisma, so people giving you money because you're cute, reverence, awe, worship, and prestige. So another very favorable lunar mansion. So the first transit of the day is going to be 6 a.m. on the west coast and 9 a.m. on the east coast. And we have a couple of oppositions starting out the day. So the first one of those is going to be Mars in Libra in opposition to Chiron retrograde in the sign of Aries. And remember, Chiron in Aries, all of these like selfish, immature, or behaviors that lack follow through, those kinds of things, and things you might feel like you've already dealt with. And where we have this Mars in Libra energy, remember I said that's very much like the Knight of Swords, rushing into these situations, guns blazing, demanding justice. So it would make sense that this would be an opposition. Now, this is pretty early in the day for a lot of you, I'm sure. On the East Coast, obviously, it's going to be closer to the middle of the morning. So just be very mindful of these things on Friday, October 1st. Use a little bit of that numinous charisma. The next opposition is going to be a little over an hour later. And that is going to involve the moon in Leo and Saturn retrograde in the sign of Aquarius. So the moon in Leo is great for creativity, great for romantic feelings. It's great for calling your kids or encouraging your children to call you also. The Saturn retrograde in Aquarius, in this case, it depends, like if you have a large family, like if you have a lot of siblings, and all of you kind of jockey for position with your parents, there could be a lot of tension with this opposition. Likewise, if you have a lot of children, or if you work in early childhood education, you might notice the kids trying to suck up to you or trying to jockey for favor. There might be things like that going on. A little bit after this, so not quite a half hour later, Mercury, which is retrograde in Libra at this time, is going to make a square to another cardinal sign, Pluto, retrograde in Capricorn. I hope the way that I said that was clear. What I mean is that because both of these are cardinal signs, Mercury and Pluto are going to be at a square to each other, and that both are retrograde. And think too about Mercury is the closest to the sun. It's got the very shortest orbit. And Pluto has arguably the longest orbit until we find that extra planet or outer asteroid that that overtakes Pluto's length of orbit. So this square could be kind of a clash of ideals because Mercury is retrograde in Libra, so communication about, fairness. Mercury is the exchange of ideas too. That's why it has to do with communication. So, exchange of ideas about fairness, discussing it, and then Pluto retrograde in Capricorn on the other side of that equation, talking about these situations in jobs where there's a lot of change, and there being changing circumstances around the ability of individuals to use certain resources. And then in the middle of the day, we're going to have a couple of sextiles for the moon in Leo, and they're not back to back, but the first one is around the middle of the day. There's going to be a sextile with the sun in the sign of Libra. And this sun in Libra illuminating things to be brought to justice, illuminating opportunities for equality and equalization. And the moon in Leo, the moon's a very emotional planet. There's ebbs and flows, just like our feelings and emotions. And Leo is the ruler of the heart and has to do with things involving your passions. So this sextile with the sun in Libra might be an advantageous time for you to take up a cause, something that you're passionate about, something in which you feel like you could make a change. This is during a retrograde, of course, so you would want to pick something that you have already done work on, or something that if it kind of goes by the wayside, you're not going to miss it. You can still make a lot of positive changes during a retrograde. Just because something isn't meant to last doesn't mean it's not meant to be. And in the early to middle part of the afternoon, there's going to be a fire trine. And this fire trine is going to be between the moon in Leo and Chiron retrograde in the sign of Aries. So that moon in Leo, of course, are passions, things that we are really excited about. This can be creativity, it can be romance, it can have to do with children, your children, other people's children, you being a child. Always with the best intentions. Let me just put that out there. And Chiron, being this force of healing and positive change. Now, this positive change could be you healing yourself, you doing shadow work, or it can come from without also. It could be the kind of healing of these Aries traits, these fiery traits that comes from the warm exchange of feelings between you and other people. And this can always center around any of those things: creativity, romance, or having a good relationship with your kids. And about a half hour later, we're going to see that second sextile of the day that I mentioned earlier. And that is going to be the moon in the sign of Leo, sextile Mars in Libra. Now, remember what I've been saying about this Mars in Libra being a lot like the Knight of Swords. Very fiery, just run right in there and tell everybody their business kind of energy. But where we have the moon in Leo, we're going to be bringing those passions into it. And remember, both of these sextiles are going to be with Libra placements. So we have first the sun and then Mars. energy coming through. So these situations could be related to each other, and it could be around a pet cause of yours, or a passion project, and wanting to bring attention to an injustice to invite and provoke change. And the final transit that we will be looking at for Friday, October 1st, is going to occur later into the nighttime hours. So that's going to be around 20:30. That's 8:30 p.m. on the West Coast, and 23:30 or 11:30 p.m. on the East Coast. And that's going to be a square between the moon in Leo and Uranus retrograde in the sign of Taurus. So one of those good old fixed squares that we're all so excited about. Uranus in Taurus being about the stability of groups as a whole. And sometimes that Saturn retrograde in Aquarius energy can get involved in this a little bit too. But that's not what we're talking about right now. The moon in Leo, as I mentioned, can be very artistic, very passionate, very playful also. And that might create some tension. Sometimes that levity is mistaken for a lack of caring about certain subjects. So if somebody's trying to talk to you about a very serious matter and you make light of the subject, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not taking it seriously. You're just bringing, that playful attitude to that situation. But, and especially where Uranus is retrograde in Taurus, this is going to bring out situations that we feel like we've already dealt with before, possibly, already resolved. And so there might be that extra layer of frustration around that situation. So just be mindful of that. It'll be later in the evening, so sometimes people are tired. Sometimes people haven't eaten dinner yet. Just be mindful of those things, especially if your roommate comes home from a long day at work and you happen to have had the day off, and they say something snippy to you and you respond with a joke and they don't take it very well. We could all stand to lighten up a little bit, I'm sure. So now we're going to discuss Saturday, October 2nd. Saturday at Gwinnett Arena. The lunar mansion is the 12th lunar mansion of Al-Sarfa, and that would be the tail of Leo. And the themes of the 12th lunar mansion, we have strife, combat, separation, constriction, hindrance of movement, and conflict. So think about the tail of Leo, not just as the tail of a giant cosmic lion, but also kind of serpentine in nature. And I know that people complain because they feel like serpents get a bad rap on my channel. We're just talking about symbolism. Just talking about symbolism here. And snakes can be difficult to see until they're right up on you. So it's really the fault of the human if it gets bitten by a snake. The snake is just being true to its nature. And that is at the heart of why snakes are so vilified. So, 3/4 past midnight. This would be 3/4 past 0300 hours if you live on the East Coast. There's going to be a sextile between Venus in Scorpio and Pluto retrograde in Capricorn, like that. A lot of you are probably going to be asleep, but remember that this Venus in Scorpio is a very hidden energy. There's a focus on finance and romance there. The base motivations for a lot of human behavior. And so Venus in Scorpio, there's a tendency toward manipulation because we are trying to hide those tendencies of ourselves. And of course, Pluto retrograde in Capricorn. This would be an excellent opportunity to do something really naughty, like sleep with your boss to get a promotion. But of course, I don't judge, but I also don't endorse. I'm only saying it's that kind of an energy. Corporate espionage. That's one of my spouse's favorite hobbies. And of course, the nighttime hours are the best time to do that. Of course, it's very different now than when they were breaking into the Watergate building back in the 70s. Cameras are everywhere. Everyone's being surveilled constantly. But that doesn't mean there aren't plenty of opportunities for corporate espionage in the modern world. If you want, you should tell me about your favorite corporate espionage down below. And remember that the traits of this lunar mansion are not necessarily going to be geared toward benefiting from behaviors like this. It's more to separation, constriction, and hindrance of movement. So just be very careful when you're involved in these things. Now, toward the middle of the morning, or the middle of the day. Oh, I think they might be having a sideshow outside. How exciting. So this is going to be like 10 before 1. No. 10 before 10 a.m. on the West Coast. And 10 minutes before 1300 hours or 1 p.m. on the East Coast. There's going to be a quincunx, and that's going to be between the moon in Leo and Neptune retrograde in the sign of Pisces. So this quincunx could drive some kind of action, but with Neptune retrograde in Pisces, it's going to be very non-directional. And so this passionate action coming from that moon in Leo space, kind of diffused by the beautiful blue ocean of Neptune retrograde in Pisces, is going to be kind of difficult to control. It could be just a general sending of an energy of well-being out into the universe. Half past noon on the west coast and half past 1500 hours or 3 p.m. on the east coast, there's going to be an opposition. And this is going to be between the moon in the sign of Leo and Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius. Aquarius. And of course, these are two very powerful fixed signs. This passionate moon in Leo and the unpredictable expansion and contraction that we're seeing in our social groups with Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius. I keep wanting to say Pisces. I'm not sure why. Well, I mean, Jupiter was in Pisces for a second, and it'll be in Pisces later, but right now it's in Aquarius, and it's retrograde. Until, I think, next week or the week after. Yeah. October 17th and 18th is when Jupiter is going to be going direct. But there might be expressions of affection that are misconstrued and end up alienating people. Or expressions of passions that end up alienating a person. So, and especially because with the lunar mansion, we're dealing with things like separation and constriction and conflict. So just be very careful of that in the middle of the day on Saturday, October 12th. Maybe an hour and a half later, there's going to be a sextile, and that's going to be between the moon in the sign of Leo and Mercury retrograde in Libra. Mercury retrograde in Le Sable. I'm just kidding. So the sextile, appealing to somebody's heart might benefit some kind of communication about a legal matter or about other things covered by Libra, like if you're talking to a romantic partner, a spouse, or a boyfriend or girlfriend, or you want to appeal to their heart. And the next thing we're going to be looking at is going to be occurring in the middle of the afternoon, so a little bit after that. And it's going to be a quincunx. So we've got the moon in the sign of Leo, quincunx Pluto, which is retrograde in Capricorn. And be very careful how you proceed, because remember, with some of these traits of Al-Sarfa going on, strife and combat, for example, And also the fact that this is a waning moon and that the new moon is going to be occurring in Virgo like the following Wednesday. That if you are trying to appeal to your boss for a raise or some other matter in which you are dealing with your passions in the context of your career, just be very careful what actions you take with that quincunx. And the final transit that we will be discussing for Saturday, October 2nd, is a square. And it's the moon in Leo is going to be square Venus in Scorpio. This is a very interesting combination of energies. This is going to be when the moon is void, of course, so it will be entering Virgo early the following morning. We'll talk about that later. And Leo and Scorpio are both fixed signs. And Leo is your fire sign energy. So we're dealing with the moon, which is a watery planet in the fire sign of Leo. And that's going to be square to the passionate planet of Venus in this passionate watery sign of Scorpio, and where we're looking at our motivations regarding finance and romance, people trying to hide those things. So this square could be very tricky. The moon is waning at this time, and it will be void, of course, going into Virgo. So I would wait, honestly, until the next day to have any serious dealings with relationship, because the following day we'll be going into a lunar mansion that's much better for that. This energy is going to be a little bit tricky. It's a square, so there's a lot of tension. There's fire and water mixing together as they do. And also the lunar mansion being strife, combat, conflict, and separation. So that's going to be occurring kind of in the middle of the afternoon into the evening. So during that period of time, just be very aware of any tension that might crop up between you and your partner. Okay, so we made it all the way to Sunday. And if you're still awake, why don't you tell me a short story using 3 emojis down in the comments? So we made it all the way to Sunday, October 3rd. And the lunar mansion for this day is Al-Awa, and that has to do with the wings of Virgo. I think Al-Awa actually means like a barking dog. So that would have had to do more with like how the constellations used to be. The themes of this lunar mansion are conjunction, erotic bonds, alchemical marriage, union, sexuality, and vital energy. And the moon is going to be entering the sign of Virgo around 1:38 in the morning on the west coast, which makes it 4:38 in the morning on the east coast. Like I mentioned at the end of the transits for yesterday, this lunar mansion will be much better for your relationship than the very tail end of Al-Sarfa yesterday. Around the middle of the morning, we're going to have an opposition between the sun, which is in the relationship-oriented, sometimes sign of Libra, and Chiron, which is retrograde in the self-oriented sign of Aries. So, there might be situations in relationships. Now, this could be your partnership romantically, but it could also be a business partnership. It could be a legal matter. It could be with open enemies also. That one person at work that you're just never going to get along with. I always try to be the sunshine of their day, so they'll never forget me. This Chiron in Aries, of course, can be selfish behaviors, immaturity. It can be starting things and not finishing them, and dealing with those behaviors that you think that you guys have already worked that out. So there might be something like that that comes up in the middle of the morning toward noon on Sunday, October 3rd. This may or may not happen for some of you at work. But I have to point out that this is a very excellent lunar mansion to be working out that kind of issue. The moon will be waning and will be going into the new moon just a couple of days later, really. Maybe like 3 days later. We're going to get that new moon, which is in Libra. I hope I didn't say Virgo earlier, but I urge you to take advantage of the lunar mansion energies. But do keep in mind that because they are waning, it's a good opportunity to carry things out of your life. That's what waning moons are for, getting rid of garbage. You always have to take the garbage out, otherwise it will smell. You'll get nasty little visitors that I won't talk about here, because I know that people can find that very triggering. This is a great opportunity to do that. But enough about that transit. I just really like oppositions. It is a good time to force a change. And I have 2 strongly placed fixed signs and then 1 mutable sign. But I actually really enjoy change. So this is going to occur around 2 p.m. That would be 1400 hours on the West Coast. And that's going to be around 5 p.m. or 1700 hours on the East Coast. And it's a quincunx. And this is between the moon in Virgo and Saturn retrograde in Aquarius. And something about thinking about Saturn and Aquarius makes me have a lot of gas in my stomach. So I hope it's not too gurgly while I talk about this. This quincunx with this moon in Virgo, and because it's in the 13th lunar mansion, this is a really good time to execute a bond of benefit, like marrying for money. That would be a really good energy for that. Or like starting a relationship to gain status. But remember that Saturn is retrograde right now, and so your relationship might only last like a week or something. But it's that kind of energy. You might ink a really good deal that, even though it only lasts for a week, it could set you up for a lifetime. And then kind of in the middle of the afternoon toward the evening hours, there's going to be a trine, and it's an air trine. So we've got Mercury retrograde in Libra, and that is trine Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius. Mercury and Jupiter are both very open-minded energies. Mercury, of course, very gender fluid, very swift-moving, always on the go, always knowing people's business. And Jupiter, king of all the gods, and granter of great fortune, right? But right now, both of them are retrograde, so very in their own energies. And so Mercury in Libra could be communication about court cases, could be communication with partners about different things. And because Mercury is retrograde in Libra, these things might only last for that retrograde season. But where we have this trine, and with Jupiter in Aquarius, there could be a beneficial expansion. And especially with the lunar mansion, there's a focus with this lunar mansion on more like romantic energies, shall we say, like very intimate energies. But this could also pertain to money. I feel like money and sex are very linked energy-wise, and cause people to do terrible, terrible things. But I'm not judging. Everyone has their own motivations. That's what free will is all about. And the final transit that we will be discussing for this week and for Sunday, October 3rd, is a quincunx between the moon in Virgo and Chiron in Aries. And as I mentioned before, Chiron's retrograde, so there might be issues coming up about selfishness or immaturity that you feel like you've already dealt with. But this action with the moon in Virgo, there could be an opportunity to use all of these energies from the 13th lunar mansion of Al-Awa, especially because the moon is waning and we're heading toward that new moon. This is a great opportunity to get rid of old bad habits in relationships. And the quincunx is an action that drives that. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me for your astrology forecast for the week ahead of September 27th through October 3rd. If you enjoy these videos, please let me know. I always love to hear from you guys. Your likes and your comments are greatly appreciated. And thank you so much to everyone who helped me reach 1,500 subscribers. I'm very excited to do the reading for the winner of the giveaway. So and any of you who didn't win this time, please feel free to submit again next time I open up the giveaways. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you again very soon.